So guys, today we're going to be talking about Dead Man's Tale. Yes, it did get a nerf, but how significant of a nerf is it? Stated in the Sandbox patch notes, they removed the Hipfire damage falloff scaler, which was matching that of its zoom at 1.8. They also reduced aim assist cone angle hip scaler from 1.5 to 1.2. Now, I can sit here and pretend to act like I know what that means, but the reality is, it's irrelevant. No, the only thing that is relevant is answering the question, is DMT better or worse? And then the follow-up question is, well, how much better and how much worse? Obviously, from the patch notes, it should be worse. And when we actually tested out DMT and its damage fall off previously, something that really made DMT very, very strong was the fact that it was able to still maintain reticle stickiness at great lengths in its hip-fire form. Yes, this is a scout rifle, but you could shoot it from the hip, similar to Last Word with its exotic catalyst, which increases hip-fire rate, as well as removing all hip-fire accuracy penalties. And of course, it had the same zoom scaler of 1.8 added here, meaning the weapon was still maintaining reticle stickiness, accuracy, and crit potential all the way up to 65 meters pre 3.2.1. Now, post 3.2.1, you'll start to see the damage fall off from the hip at about 42 meters. Now, given the maps we currently have in rotation, 42 meters, that's not that bad, right? That's pretty much every map. You're good, man. But no, just because you're not receiving damage fall off until about 42 meters, that's not what's really killing this weapon in its hipfire form. It's actually in its ability to land crits at range. That drop in its aim assist cone from 1.5 to 1.2, it's definitely noticeable, meaning anything longer than 25 meters, unless the target is standing completely still, landing crits is actually difficult for once with Dead Man's Tale, at least from the hip. And that's really the name of the game with this scout rifle, right? Landing crits is the whole reason for this scout rifle's existence, as Cranial Spike increases precision damage with every precision hit, as well as quickening that reload speed. The damage starting off at 81, ramping up to 97 at Cranial Spike times 5. If you notice there, the damage is very similar to that of 120 round per minute hand cannons, and rightfully so. This is a 120 round per minute scout rifle while aiming down sights or without the exotic catalyst. But again, when shooting from the hip, this actually allowed the scout rifle to easily kill opponents in about 0.8 seconds, and sometimes it even allowed you to get the 2-tap if you had Cranial Spike ramped up. We're talking the difference between its base time to kill value of 1 second at 120 rounds per minute, dropping down to 0.8 seconds at 150 rounds per minute, and if you happen to 2-tap, which you could still do even in this sandbox, you can actually kill opponents in 0.4 seconds. That's fast. Like, the only thing I think that was faster than that was like 2-tapping with Not Forgotten Luna's Howl way back when. Needless to say, Bungie did not target the damage here. They didn't go after it. They didn't want to hurt it, as that would of course hurt it inside of PvE. Instead though, they wanted to target its ease of use. What I can tell you from my experience playing with Dead Man's Tale on both controller and mouse and keyboard, it is noticeable. Now, I did not play on controller too much with Dead Man's Tale before, but I can tell you right now, landing hipfire shots on enemies from afar is somewhat doable still on mouse and keyboard, but for controller, absolutely not. And it's kind of weird because I know Bungie actually stated that they wanted to avoid hurting the scout rifle too much for controller users, when in reality, this sandbox patch seems like it was targeting controller users amongst mouse and keyboard users. But again, controller players seem to be the bigger casualty. But even playing mouse and keyboard with my normal setup, lying rampants, taking to the air, hipfire shotting, this setup used to reward us easy cheesy kills. Not anymore. Matter of fact, there are many times when firing from the hip with DMT at mid to long range that you start to ask yourself, would it just be better if I aim down sights? Would it just be better if I use a scout rifle like a scout rifle? Well, I think that was the intention, right? Bungie wants you to use this in its yeehaw form, but only when someone is rushing you, especially considering this is a scout rifle, and for the most part, you are kind of locked in place. It's meant for those panic moments. When a shotgun rusher Houdinis himself right in front of you, this is the moment where this scout rifle is supposed to shine. Instead of stowing it like you would many other scout rifles and inevitably die as you just don't have enough time to swap to your next weapon, you now have enough time to backpedal and dismember your enemy in a very cultured way, which in my opinion is quite sexy. Believe me guys, if there is one weapon that I think might be my favorite weapon in all of Destiny, it is Dead Man's Tale. It has all the character in the world. It single-handedly lifted an entire archetype that most people forgot about. Nobody talks about scout rifles, but DMT did that. The question is it worth using now though? Because now, the hit there to its hit registration is noticeable. I actually found the weapon to still be very sticky, even up to that 40 meter range, but man, it just does not land crits like it used to. It used to give you freebies all the time. It would give you crit shots through walls. It didn't matter. That was like Dead Man's Tale hidden exotic perk. Its ability to snag crit shots like nobody's business. Unfortunately, it can't do that, which actually resulted in me using this as a scout rifle more and more. Now granted, that's not a bad thing either. Its damage is very good. It has the potential to 2-tap, but it does finally push us to use this scout rifle more as a scout rifle. And considering it is a 120, you are looking at a base time to kill value of 1 second while aiming down sights. I actually want to bring us to its random rolls, because playing with the scout rifle, there's one thing I can still say about it. This scout rifle in combination with Vorpal is still the best weapon when it comes to shredding supers. I don't care what super it is. Shadebinder, Spectral Blades, Dawn Blades, even Yeet Titans that are literally flying through the air like a meteor can still get shut down by Dead Man's Tale with Vorpal. It's so good. I really like Vorpal, guys, and it's really hard to pass up on this weapon. And matter of fact, I was actually using Dead Man's Tale this past weekend inside of trials, just in that final round to shut down supers. You see, many weapons we default to shut down a super. Maybe it's a sniper rifle. You just sit in the back praying that the guy popping his super is an idiot and will stand in your reticle, thus allowing you to clutch up. But Dead Man's Tale says no, you just have to be somewhat decent at clutching up. We'll handle the rest. Vorpal hands down is S tier. However, I am looking at other options now that this Hipfire nerf has occurred, which is resulting in me doing two things. Number one, aiming down sights more, which is why Snapshot is starting to become a more desirable option here. Not that it wasn't before, but before it was like kind of a waste. Everybody just Hipfire. You got just as many crits from the hip as you did aiming down sights, and it shot faster. Why wouldn't you Hipfire? Snapshot, though, might actually be the perk to go with, at least for like 3v3 modes or just basic 1v1s, right? Now, the aim down sight speed is not terrible as is. So even if you had to suddenly just aim down sights, I don't necessarily think you have to have Snapshot, especially if you're rocking scout rifle targeting, which only costs like 3, I believe. So you can double up on that and still have very fast ADS time. And considering that the target acquisition on this weapon has been nerfed, I think moving target might actually be the play here. Not only does this increase movement speed and target acquisition when moving while aiming down sights, but it actually gives you a +10 in its aim assist. That's a flat buff, guys. Whether you're shooting from the hip or aiming down sights, you will get that benefit from that aim assist either way. And this may actually be one of the best counters to the nerf that's occurred. Now, will this still result in you getting crit shots from 40+ meters? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, but I think it will still allow you to snag shots, especially in those 1v1 scenarios where moving target really does thrive. And whether you're aiming down sights or shooting from the hip or just backing up from a shotgun rusher, you will get the added benefits from moving target. Again though, I cannot stress how good Vorpal is on this weapon, and I would have a second DMT if you are a dedicated DMT user to swap off to. Bar none, I think Dead Man's Tale is the best weapon when it comes to shutting down supers. The only other role I would consider is maybe Killing Wind, and the reason why I bring up Killing Wind is that this perk actually does buff the range of the weapon on top of mobility and handling. The range though may actually be enough to increase that crit target acquisition at range, even from the hip. Obviously, Killing Wind is still really nice, although on a scout rifle while aiming down sights, not necessary. This weapon already has great range, up to like 70 something meters. Although there is a point, considering this weapon has that iron sight look, that you kind of start to lose the target visually. Not necessarily the weapon's performance, but when comparing it to other scout rifles, think Polaris Lance and Jade Rabbit, I think when you start talking about maps like Widow's Court, where you really start to spread things out and you literally want to sit in the back of the spawn and kill people, those scout rifles are still better. Now granted, we only have a few maps that really pushes those boundaries. And for what Dead Man's Tale is, it is a scout rifle even now that can fight into those mid to long ranges. It is not nearly as forgiving as it was before. And for mouse and keyboard users, you will have to use the scout rifle more as a scout rifle in those long ranges. You can still try to use line rampant though and push, but there was many times where my shots were still landing, but they were body shots. And a 120 or a 140 or pretty much any weapon was winning out against me. Things though that paired nicely though with Dead Man's Tale is of course Truth Teller, one of my favorite grenade launchers, and pretty much any grenade launcher in that energy slot that can roll with Disruption Break is a wonderful combination for Dead Man's Tale. I know everyone on PC hates grenade launchers, but you know, they're good, they're effective, and they also pair very nicely with DMT. As for my controller players, I think aiming down sights on controller is still very good. It's always been a good option, but shooting from the hip in the way that we do here on PC, or at least the way we do here on mouse and keyboard, is just not a viable option for you, unless the enemies just stand very, very still. Which is why when we actually look at Trials Report at the meta this past weekend, DMT is still on the list here on Steam, but it is nowhere to be found on PlayStation or Xbox, and understandably so. Outside of that, guys, I would say Dead Man's Tale for the most part is balanced in the way I think Bungie wanted to attack first, but I do foresee a possible buff in the future for Dead Man's targeting controller users, similar to what happened in Last Word. It was garbage on controller, but absolutely meta on mouse and keyboard, and eventually, after a number of updates, those roles reverse. I definitely foresee that possibly happening here with Dead Man's Tale. So for my controller players, do not be disheartened. At some point, yeehaw F the law will be meta for you. So I would definitely continue to hang on to them. Throw them in your vault if you even got any vault space. 2021 Bungie, we still don't got vault space. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.